You. Yay.
Good morning. Thank you so much for welcoming us into your home for worship this morning. This morning we have a full service combining our Celtic Music Sunday, Coming of Age at 75, and introducing of Reverend Susan. I have a spoken invocation followed by a sung invocation this morning. I'd like to read a poem called Pandemic. Pandemic. What have you thought of it as the Jewish people consider the Sabbath the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life, center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely it has become clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, as long as we all share. And now a sung invocation. Everything be all. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. After the storm passes, all over. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. After the storm cloud passes over, everything will be all right. Ho-do, ha-da-ba-da-ho-do, ha-da-ba-da-ho-do, ha-da-ba-da-hendi, hendin, ho-do, ha-da-ba-da-ho-do, ha-da-ba-da-ho-do, ha-da-ba-da-hendi, hendin, hen, ha-da-ba-da-hen, hen, ha-da-ba-da-hen, hen, ha-da-ba-da-hen, ha-da-ba-da-ho, hen, ha-da-ba-da-hen, hen, ha-da-ba-da-hen, hen, ha-da-ba-da-hen, ha-da-ba-da-ho. There are tunes in the river water, pools in the river water, pools in the river and the river calls him. There are tunes in the river water, pools in the river water, pools in the river and the river calls him. Hen, had about a hen, had about a hen, had about a hen, had about a ho. There are tunes in the river water, pools in the river water, pools in the river and the river calls him. There are tunes in the river water, pools in the river water, pools in the river and the river calls him. Hen, had about a hen, had about a hen, had about a hen, had about a ho. Ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a hendi, hendin, ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a hendi, hendin. Dance to your shadow, it's good to be living that. Dance to your shadow, it's nothing but a me. Dance to your shadow, it's good to be living that. Dance to your shadow, it's nothing but a me. Ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a hendi, hendin, ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a hendi, hen. Ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a hendi, hen. Ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a ho-do, had about a hendi, hen.
Good morning. Welcome to South Church in its current new and exciting online iteration. It is really good that we are able to be together this morning in spite of everything that has turned our worlds upside down this week. And that has taken place and is possible because of the immense amount of work done by our staff, Jen Daldeo, Jen Leiden, and Kirsten Hunter. So the next time you are able to wave at them online, do this. So normally at this point in our service, we stand up and we greet each other with a hug. Let's do it with a virtual namaste. That's an old Sanskrit word that means the soul in me bows to the soul in you. Or as one of my favorite yoga teachers used to say, the light in me honors the light in each and every one of you. Namaste. Thank you. We have announcements this morning, like we do every morning at South Church. Perhaps the most important thing we can say at this point is pay attention to your emails from South Church folk for your committees and the things that you do here that are so important to the life and work of our institution. And also watch for Facebook posts and email blasts and the website and everything else is coming out, because there's, as you know, there's so much information coming out, and we want to keep everyone safe and also keep us functioning and communicating with each other to the best of our abilities.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm a little late on technology. The 31st annual Pocket Garden Tour. It's coming, just like this, just like these little greens. And it's coming, and it's just what you're going to need come June 19th and 20th. And you can help out now by making a $25 donation and having your name listed in the blooms. And that will end up on the blooms page of the brochure. So think spring thoughts and look for bloom sales online starting next week. And yes, keep sending announcements my way.
Ever since I read Julius Caesar for the first time in about the 8th grade, I've never failed to notice when March 15th rolls around. Ever since reading Julius Caesar in the 8th grade, I've never failed to notice when March 15th rolls around. It's a fairly minor bit of the play, really. In the first act, a fortune teller accosts Caesar at a race and tells him to beware the Ides of March. And of course, he's promptly ignored. A few days later, on the 15th of March, Caesar again runs across the soothsayer and recognizing him, says, "The Ides of March are come." And the soothsayer says, "Aye, Caesar, but not gone." And Caesar goes on and he walks into the forum and is stabbed to death by several senators. Why is this compelling? And why has it stayed with me? Mostly, I think it's due to the fortune teller's wry response to Caesar's amazing hubris. And maybe it's a little because there are so many times that I've been offered bits of wisdom and advice that I don't take to heart and don't even take the time to investigate. Why didn't Julius Caesar at least ask the soothsayer why he thought the Ides of March would be dangerous? And why don't I look into the thoughts, reasons behind offered suggestions? Am I really that busy or naive or arrogant? In addition to being the anniversary of Caesar's death, today is also the birthday of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and hers is a voice that I do try to pay attention to. In addition to responding to the question of when there will be enough women on the Supreme Court with when there are 9, the notorious RBG has said that she would like to be remembered as, quote, someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work to the very best of her ability, to help repair tears in her society, to make things a little better through the use of whatever ability she has. To do something, as my colleague David Souter would say, outside myself, because I've gotten much more satisfaction for the things that I've done for which I was not paid. Good morning again, and welcome to South Church. My name is Laurie Bilby, and I am one of a team of worship associates that have the honor of working with our guest speakers and talented staff to bring worship services to you. I'm so pleased to be working today with our guest speaker, Alice O'Trainer, who has been an active member of South Church since arriving several years ago, including currently being co-chair of our search committee. I'm also really pleased to be working today for the first time, with the Reverend Susan Suchocki Brown, who you'll hear from a little bit later on this service. The music today is graciously offered by our Director of Music, Joanne Connolly, Jonathan Booth, and Cynthia Chatis. Our chalice this morning will be lit by the Reverend Dr. Susan Suchocki Brown, who after a long tenure at the Leominster Mass UU Church is joining us. She's a third generation UU, a native New Englander, the chaplain for the Leominster Fire Department, and our new minister. And so we look forward to working with you, getting to know you, and are delighted that you are among us, especially in this most topsy-turvy of times. So I'd like to light. We light this chalice to help us move from truth to untruth, to help us move from ignorance to wisdom, to help us move from animosity to love, to help us move from bondage to freedom. We dedicate ourselves before this light to affirm and practice truth, wisdom, love, and freedom today and in the days to come. Now please rise and body your spirit. You can still stand up at home. You don't have to stay on the couch. And recite together our mission statement printed in your order of service. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Kirsten Hunter, and this is Jen Daldeo, and we are your trustee religious education staff on duty today. Sending a shout out to Kat out there, wherever you are. And we have a story that Jen and I wrote together this weekend just for you guys. But before we tell it, I was going to invite you to do something that we do in Children's Chapel. So I'm inviting all of you, of everybody of all ages, to engage in a little sharing that we do together on Sunday mornings when we have Children's Chapel. It's called A Rose, a Bud, or a Thorn. And basically, you're going to think about something that is on your heart. A rose would be something you're happy about. A bud would be something you're anticipating, looking forward to. And a thorn might be something that's sticky for you right now. And as you think about those things, consider typing into the chat box what your rose, your bud, or your thorn is. And if you are a family together, you could put each person's name before what you type so that people can see everyone's thoughts. And while you do that, we're going to tell you a story.
There's a little village just a little bit north of Portsmouth where a recipe for the most wonderful bread in the whole world was created kind of by accident. Each person who lived in the village had a particular job, one thing they were each responsible for. Every day, the people would wake up and they would have a simple breakfast of the nice bread that the village baker had made. Then the people would do their jobs, get some rest, and start over the next day. It was a very nice town and everything worked just fine.
One night, a big storm rolled into town. The wind was so strong it rattled the windows, and the people could feel their beds shake. It blew so hard that some trees fell down. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but a very big tree fell on the bakery that night, and it ruined the oven that the baker used to bake the bread. When the people of the village woke up, the storm had passed. They went to their front doors to get the very nice bread that the baker always made for breakfast, and found that the bread wasn't there. It was a bit confusing, but these were fairly resilient people, so they skipped breakfast and moved on with their day, just a little grouchier than usual. Skipping breakfast will do that.
While everyone else went to school and work, the baker stayed home alone and felt really awful. The oven was broken and the bakery was wrecked. As the days went on, things felt less and less nice for everyone. There weren't many friendly gatherings, and everyone's work got a little less perfect. The baker especially was feeling down. She never even came out of her house anymore. She used to have the nicest, shining and happy smile that made everyone else smile when they would pass by her. Now she was just sad, and she just wanted to be home alone.
One day, a while later, the town potter was on his way to his shop, and he bumped into the painter, who was carrying his art supplies down the sidewalk. It didn't go well. They kind of yelled at each other, and they both got all worked up. It was getting worse and worse until a child came by and said, "Pause." The potter and the painter stopped and looked at the child, and the child said, "Ripples come from bad and good, and you need some bread." This was a very confusing sentence. The potter looked at the child with a raised eyebrow, and then he looked over to the painter, who was looking across the street past both of them at the closed sign on the bakery.
Ever since that bakery closed, things haven't been quite right, the painter said. The potter slowly nodded his head. "You're right," the potter said to the child, who was now smiling at them both. The child bent down to pick up a large piece of pottery that had fallen to the ground in the collision. It was covered in color splashes from the paint the painter had been holding. The splashes were beautiful, and the pot itself was beautiful too. The child asked if he could have the piece of pottery so he could give it to the baker as a gift. Both the potter and the painter nodded their heads. As the child passed a lovely row of large maple trees, a woman boiling sap from the trees called out and asked where he was going with the large, pretty pot.
"I'm going to the baker to give her this gift." The woman thought of the bread and the shiny smiled baker, and she ran into her house and then came back with a jug of golden syrup and walked beside the child. The pair came across a farmer who was milking cows, same as every day, and the farmer asked them, "What are you going to do?" "We're going to the baker to give her these gifts," said the child. And the farmer ran into his house and joined them, carrying a big package of butter that he'd made.
They continued on, and an old woman spotted them through her kitchen window. She called to them, "What's going on?" The child told her they were taking gifts to the baker, and soon she was beside them on her little electric scooter with jars of strawberry jam in the basket that she had made in June. Slowly but surely, people from the next block and then the next street beyond gathered up gifts to bring as they journeyed over to the baker. And before long, most of the town had arrived at her little house with their arms filled with presents.
When the baker answered her door, the last thing she expected was to see a parade of gift bearers. "These are for you," said the child, "because you made beautiful bread for all of us for so long, and everyone in this town is so grateful." The baker almost started to cry. It was such an unexpected gesture. She looked at the child and said, "Thank you." And she brought the pot and other gifts into her kitchen and set them on the counter.
The baker stood there looking at the pot, and something started to grow in the middle of her chest. It was a warm, sweet feeling. It made her want to push her hands into freshly risen dough. So she pulled out her flour canister and started to create. Realizing she was out of sugar, she instead used some of the sweet maple syrup the neighbor had brought. Inspired by the designs on the beautiful pot, she carved a design into the top of the shaped loaf before baking. In a few hours, the smell of fresh bread was drifting from the small wood oven in her house. And as soon as her neighbors smelled that bread, they realized just how much they had missed it being a part of their day.
When her shop was ruined, the baker never imagined how much her bread had meant to the town. She had been sad and felt like she didn't have the energy to find her way back. Now, as she looked at all the people from the town, she realized she was a part of something wonderful. She realized all at once that losing her oven wasn't what had made her so sad. Being a part of something bigger than herself was the reason she had been so happy for so many years. And when that stopped, she lost the source of her joy. But now they had all come back. She sliced loaves of bread. Everybody came, and they smeared thick layers of butter that the farmer had brought and jam that the old woman had made. They marveled at the painted pot, and one by one, everyone in that town realized that each of them was part of one big, beautiful family. And once again, for many days and years to come, everything was just fine. But the bread, oh, the bread, tasted even better than it ever had before. And the baker was super shiny again.
It is time for our morning offering. We had thought about the possibility of stationing some people out on State Street so you could drive by and put money in a basket, but I think we'll work on our technology. In the meantime, you certainly know how to use stamps and an envelope to mail in your pledges and donations. And we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we do have a shared plate partner this month, who is the Women Aid of Greater Portsmouth. This is an organization founded in 2005 that provides short-term financial assistance to community members in need when they have nowhere else to turn. You can find out more about Women Aid on their website, and you can also make a donation directly to that shared plate recipient. So consider doing that, and thank you. We'll now have offertory music.
Good morning again. Along with our Celtic music theme, John and I are going to share a piece called Anarchy Gordon. It's a traditional Irish ballad I learned from the Irish singer Mary Black. There are many characters. I'm just going to introduce them to you so you can follow the story. Anarchy Gordon is a sailor. It sounds a little like anarchy, but it's Anarchy. Anarchy Gordon. He's in love with a young woman named Jeannie, and she is set her love on him. But her parents want her to marry someone named Sultan, as in an arranged marriage. This may or may not go so well for all of them, but you'll find out in the story about Anarchy Gordon, Jeannie, the Sultan, and Jeannie's parents from Ireland. Anarchy Our king is bonny, and there is my love. My heart lies on him, and will not remove. Will not remove for all that I have done. Oh, I never will forget me love. Anarchy, Anarchy Gordon, he's bonny and he
enticed anyone that ever saw, enticed any woman that so he has done me. Oh, I never will forget the love I keep. Anarchy Gordon, I beg for my bread, and before on Mary's salt, it's gold to my head, gold to my head, and gowns fringed down to my knee, and a love I forget, love I keep. You that are my parents, to church you may be bring, but unto Lord Sultan I'll never bear a son. Son or daughter, I'll never bow my knee, and the lies I get, love I keep. Jeannie was married, and from church she was brought home. And when she and her maidens so merry should have been, she and her maidens so merry should have been, she went into her chamber, she cries, oh. The day Jeannie married was the day that Jeannie died, and the day that young Anarchy came home all the time. Down came the maidens all bringing all their hands, saying, oh, it's been so long, you've been so long on the sands. You that are maiden, go take me by the hand and take me to the chamber that we love. She lies in. He's kissed her cold lips till his heart has turned to stone, and he's died in the chamber. And his love, she lies in.
Let's just take a moment now to leave behind the chaos that surrounds us today and join together in a time of meditation. Placing our feet on the floor, sitting upright but not rigid, letting our shoulders relax, our hands find a comfortable place, allowing our breathing to slow. Let's imagine together that everyone we know is sending positive energy our way, wishing only the best for us, wishing us all good health and happiness. Let those good wishes flow in. Now let's imagine that the energy that we've received is flowing back out to our family, our friends, and to all living beings, wishing them health in this time, wishing them only the best. May we all be filled with positive energy. May we all be well. My favorite service at South Church is when the young folks that have been participating in our coming of age program stand up bravely and tell us what they believe. I find that act of courage both inspiring and humbling. Humbling because it is very rare for us as adults to stand up and lay bare what we've come to believe. It takes a lifetime to develop a good sense of how we'd answer that question if we were put on the spot, like our coming of age youth. I understand that their what I believe statements will change, sometimes drastically, over the years ahead. When I was their age in junior high, I had firmly decided that I wanted to go into the convent, joining the Sisters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, serving as a missionary in Africa. These were the nuns with the big white hats, like the flying nun on TV at that time. Well, that didn't happen, obviously. So I do realize that our coming of age youth will change and develop over the coming years as I did. But I still deeply respect their raw honesty, and I also revere the fact that our UU faith not only allows, but encourages them to explore and to think for themselves. This is a far cry from the Baltimore Catechism answer and response that form the basis of my religious education here at Immaculate Conception Church in Portsmouth. Who made me? God made me. Why did God make me? God made me to know, love, and serve him in this world and to be happy with him forever in the next. And on, chapter after chapter, year after year in CCD classes, right? I know that if you were all sitting here in the sanctuary today, I'd see some nodding heads because you too experienced this. It wasn't until I landed at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., with its requirement that everyone seeking a liberal arts degree take 18 credits in philosophy, that I began to explore more deeply the beliefs of my childhood. My real epiphany came in my junior year when I chose a 2-semester course studying the writings of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a controversial at the time French Jesuit philosopher and theologian who was also a paleontologist and a geologist. He had just published a book called The Phenomenon of Man, which, while not outright banned by the church, had been the subject of a stern warning from the Vatican that all priests should, quote, take care to guard young minds from its content, unquote. Yep, they had reason to be concerned. Desjardins explained evolution in a way that's never left me. He described how the first single-cell organisms capable of photosynthesis appeared over 4 billion years ago in Western Australia, Greenland, and Canada. It took another 1.5 billion years for signs of a nucleus to appear, which would allow more complex forms of life to evolve, and another 1 billion+ year before the first multi-cell organism, red algae, appeared on the scene. Very slow going. How 4 to 5 million years ago, the Earth started to warm, bringing about an explosion of new marine life, the age of the trilobites, that was followed by plants making their way onto land. To the best we can calculate, humans didn't appear until somewhere between 5 and 7 million years ago. We are neophytes in the story of evolution. If the history of evolution were mapped on a yardstick, we'd be a very thin pencil line at the very, very end. How could that be? The Baltimore Catechism made it seem as though all of creation came into being in such a short time. 7 days, right? Then Desjardins took us through the succession of human interactions and systems, starting with the earliest cavemen who organized in very small family units, until realizing that their survival was enhanced when 2 or 3 families cooperated to hunt and to ward off enemies, which were other family units. Before too long, these family bands organized themselves into small tribes in order to hunt and gather more efficiently and ward off enemies, again, other tribes. And so it has gone throughout history, with tribes eventually joining together by regions, and regions eventually joining together into small nations, and nation states banding together to form countries who have now formed regional alliances like the UN and NATO and the European Union. On the page here. Desjardins described evolution as an upward spiral that continued with some fits and starts to go higher and higher, with each step along the way becoming both more complex and more cooperative. Just like the single cell that eventually evolved to form all the diverse life we now see on Earth. Amazing. And one of the most captivating of his theories was that each of us is not just a witness to this evolutionary process, but an active participant in it. We each have a part to play in creating what the next part of the spiral will look like. Desjardins wrote, "We may perhaps imagine that creation was finished long ago, but that would be quite wrong. It still continues more magnificently and at the highest levels of the world." And later in the passage, he wrote, "Our duty as men and women is to proceed as if the limits of our ability did not exist. We are all collaborators in creation." Proceed as if the limits of our ability did not exist. We are all collaborators in creation. I love that. And also one of my favorite parts, he posited that most of mankind's greatest achievements, greatest advances along the spiral have followed periods of chaos, citing many examples throughout ancient and modern history. My interpretation is that at various times throughout our history, we seem to lose our way and either stall or start to slip backwards. Then enough good people, proceeding as if the limits of our ability did not exist, recognize the misdirection and begin to exert their abilities to move us forward again. The period of chaos seems to awaken us and provide us with renewed purpose to move in a more positive and cooperative way, collaborating in creation. Theodore Parker, a Unitarian minister whose collection of 10 sermons was published in 1853, penned the famous words that Martin Luther King and others have quoted to such great effect. "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. But from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice. Things refuse to be mismanaged long." What a quote. Things refuse to be mismanaged long. We're so focused on his words about the arc of the moral universe that that last phrase is often overlooked. But for me, that line holds just as much power, especially in our nation today. Does this concept give us hope in the chaos of today? It does me. So back to my personal journey. After college, it became increasingly difficult for me to attend Catholic Mass without feeling like a hypocrite. When it came to the part of the service where everyone in unison recited the Apostles' Creed, I started mumbling through more and more phrases that I no longer believed and could no longer bring myself to say. The religion of my childhood didn't work for me anymore, but I hadn't yet replaced it. Then in 2002, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, not just any breast cancer, but breast cancer with 2 lesions, 8 positive lymph nodes, a very aggressive form of cancer, and a 30 to 35% 5-year survival rate. Nothing prods you into thinking about the meaning of life like receiving such a diagnosis. I no longer believed in the anthropomorphic God who benevolently managed our lives and answered our individual prayers, nor did I believe in original sin, heaven and hell, or a slew of other constructs I learned as a child. So I started trying to sort through what I did believe. In doing this, I realized that Desjardins' philosophy had provided a foundation for my life all along. Little by little, I began to shape my own beliefs around that foundation. If not the grandfatherly God who created the world in 7 days, then what? How did it all begin? How did we all begin? What began to make sense to me was that there was a creative energy in the universe, moving us ever onward up the spiral. Then I started translating the religion of my youth into my new theology. The Baltimore Catechism response that said, "Man was created in the image of God," became, "We all have some of this creative energy within us. We can use our creative energy to help move along up the spiral toward a better world, to literally create a better world." There's tremendous power and agency in believing that we have an energy capable to do that. And I believe we project this creative energy in almost everything we do and everyone we meet. This power, this energy is within each of us individually and is multiplied many times in a community such as ours. We literally can walk out our doors and create the world we want to walk in each day for the betterment of ourselves and everyone around us. I love this poem from the Tiny Buddha website. Life is an echo. What you send out comes back. What you give, you get. What you see in others exists in you. Radiate and give love, and that love will come back to you. Just imagine what that means about the ripple effects each of us cause each day with everyone we meet. I believe that Desjardins was right. It's very hard to see the progress being made when we're standing on our little piece of the spiral. But when we look at the broad sweep of evolutionary history, we are moving forward in some very large ways. Barack Obama recommended a book called Factfulness by Hans Rosling a couple of years ago. Rosling compiled some amazing statistics from very trusted sources. For example, between 1800 and 2017, the average lifespan globally went from 31 years to 72 years. And a large part of that gain was from the fact that the percentage of children dying before age 5 went from 44% down to 0.6%. And in the same time period, the global literacy rate went from 10% to 86%, with many, many, many more such advances cited in his book. If you want to feel good about what's happening in the world, I suggest you get it, Factfulness by Hans Rosling. So where does the spiral end? Desjardins believed we would eventually become one with God. He called it the Omega point. Okay, so in my personal theology, we eventually become one with the creative energy of the universe. What does all that mean? Well, I'm only 75, still a youngster yet, so I haven't quite figured all that out. But when I stand outside at night and gaze in awe at the trillions of stars in the sky, I can't help wondering, maybe we are still in the infant stage of evolution, like the very first organisms capable of photosynthesis over 4 billion years ago. Maybe we will continue along the spiral so that our beautiful blue boat home we call Earth will begin to cooperate with other planets, with other galaxies, with other universes, perhaps. So that's my coming of age statement, what I believe. I believe in the creative energy that permeates the universe, and that this creative energy is within each of us, that this energy gives us the power to change the world around us in small ways and large ways, moving us further and further up the spiral towards greater cooperation and more peace. And that this creative energy within each of us is within each of us and will help us find our way through the chaos of our time, moving forward, even if we don't know what lies ahead. Thank you so much for letting me share with you today. And now I'd like to welcome Reverend Susan to offer a few reflections for us.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Alice. Think about the word perhaps and connection and the spiral journey that we're on. Thank you very much. There are a lot of firsts in our life. First breath, first taste, first steps, first bumps, first grade, first report card, first bruises, first crush, first kiss, first scars, first vehicle, first love, first loss, first career, first home, first child, first spiritual experience, first church family, first introduction to new people, first experience of a pandemic, first pause in one-on-one relating, first time to suspend worship together in a physical space, and a first time to try alternative means of connecting. A lot of first in our life. And each first in our life, whether it be primal, like breathing, walking, or social or emotional or personal, each brings with it concern, anxiety, and fear. This fear may oftentimes lead to procrastination, which has at its root that we can't or we won't do it, whatever it is, perfectly. One and all, this is no time for procrastination. A tough, painful decision was made to temporarily pause in-person worship and in-person South Church sponsored events. The decision was made even in the midst of knowing that there is no perfect answer, no perfect solution, and perfectly unable to come up with a timetable of resolution. And yet this is no time to procrastinate. And I encourage you to take that attitude to not procrastinate to heart. If you are feeling lonely and isolated, don't procrastinate. Pick up the phone, write an email, send a note, FaceTime, reach out and make contact with your neighbor, a family friend, a loved one, maybe someone who's moved far away. It is time to reconnect. Talk about heartfelt things. Maybe reminisce a bit, maybe plan for the future a bit, maybe sing each other a song. Tell a story, listen, and share deeply. Because if you are feeling lonely and isolated, I am betting those you reach out are feeling lonely and isolated as well. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, don't procrastinate. Shut down some of that outside chatter. Limit the time you spend watching, listening, or trying to take in all the information about the coronavirus and its effects, symptoms, probable outcomes, beginning, endings, on and on and on and on. You will not miss any major news, I can promise you, especially if you have cultivated other less stressful means of gathering news. And if you are feeling tired, do not procrastinate. Put your feet up. Take a rest, take a nap. Read a book, the one that is in the when I have time, I will get to it pile. Binge on reruns. Lassie, Frasier, The Hobbit, Grey's Anatomy, Doc Martin, Charlie Chaplin, Star Trek. Those are some of my re-watches. Enjoy the outdoors. See the crocus, see the daffodils, hear the bird trills, enjoy the sunshine, the wind, the fresh air. It was wonderful to see Kat out, and I'm assuming it was her garden. She means that she was outside enjoying the fresh air. Do it, don't procrastinate, get out there. It is okay. It is okay to rest, to close your eyes. Stress makes us very, very tired. It can also make us irritable and distracted. Be gentle and patient with yourself and be gentle and patient with everyone else. Expect delays, expect uncertainty. If you are rested, you will be ever more prepared to deal with the stressors that are being triggered right now. And if you're worried about the larger community, as I know you are, be in touch with and offer assistance. Do shelters need more socks? Do they need gloves? Do they need paper towels, paper goods, toilet paper, canned goods? Can you drop off something? Can you drop off a meal to a neighbor, a coworker, a church member who is needing to stay home from school because school is shut down and childcare is shut down? My best friend and I have a plan. If either of us is in isolation or ill, we'll drop off a meal to one another. We'll drive up to the driveway. We'll honk the horn 3 times. We'll set down the soup. If you're feeling concerned, don't procrastinate. Reach out to someone, make a connection, ask for what you need. Suggest ways that we can help you or someone that you know. And most of all, try to remember that nothing about life and in life is about perfection, because a blessing of life is that our first are most often followed by seconds and thirds and fourths and fifths and more. So as we move into a new week, let me tell you, I am so delighted to be with you. But as we move into this new week, let us practice being realistic and not pessimistic. Remember, we are constantly learning, and the situations and the personal and societal needs are rapidly changing, and we are responding with intentionality. And Alice reminded us, with agency, with ability. We really are still connected, just in different ways. Keep a calm heart, meditate, keep an open mind, and explore the most health-filled approaches to stay well. And by all means, do take care and be well. May it be so.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I understand tradition here has been always to shake hands and to hold hands at the time of benediction, but since that's not possible and since you're home, what I would encourage you to do is either hold the hand of the person nearest to you and or just hug yourself and give yourself energy and love. And I close with these words from a colleague of mine, Reverend Fred Gillis. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Be in peace, we are here for you. So may it be.
Oh, the summertime has come, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and the wild autumn time grows around the blooming heather. Where you go, I see you, and we'll all go together to the wild autumn time. Oh, my love's love, beyond your crystal fountain, and on its heart will build all the flowers of the mountain. Will you I see you, and we'll all come together to the wild mountain time, all around the mountain heather. Will you I see you. My true love, she were gone, I would surely find no other to pull wild mountain time, all around the woman other. Where you go, I see you, and we'll all go together to the wild mountain time, all around the woman mother. Will you I see?
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up, no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. Feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off it, moving so phenomenally. You're more like the way we rock it, so don't stop. It's under the lights when everything goes. Nowhere to hide when I'm getting you close. When we move, well, you already know. It's just the